Hello, everyone. Welcome to the C Squared podcast with Cori and Curtis. It's not a solo show, as Curtis likes to say. It is a duo show with both of us involved. We're here to talk to you about how to handle things when you find yourself in a sticky situation or something is going wrong or, it's a bit more stressful than average.
Corinne has had one of those days.
I have had one of those days.
She's had one of those days. So, Corinne, I'm going to let you start, but with asking me the question, because otherwise I'm just going to turn this into a shit show.
No, just go ahead and ask me your question. I know you've got them. I know they're burning inside of your mind.
They've got them. So, well, first of all, I just want to kind of give like a bit of an intro here, which is today we had a bit of a crisis situation, and I'm not going to say what it was. A small crisis situation that Corinne went in and handled as best as she possibly could. Just a small, it wasn't like a crisis. It was just like a small little blip.
A snafu.
Snafu. Yeah. There was a couple snafus that happened today with something that she and I have both been working on. But it wasn't anything too incredibly horrible or anything like that. Just small snafus here and there. So one thing that we did is we kind of looked at where could the problem be coming from? So, I mean, you didn't really ask me for help. I kind of bullied my way in there and kind of like
your style. That's what you do.
Which is my style. So she expressed to me that she was having a difficulty. and I said, okay, well, I'll take a look pretty quickly here. And here's the thing is that there was a few things we found that could have been improved. We don't know if that's the actual handling for the whole thing, but there were some small things that both of us overlooked in the past week. Mm-hmm. So one thing I want to point out is that Corinne, when I suggested these things to her, she did not appear to get all mad at me and defensive about the fact that I was pointing these things out. No.
So most people, when they find themselves in a crisis, the reason it never gets fixed or a snafu or a misstep or anything like that, the reason these things kind of spiral and get blown out of proportion is one, they take it way too personally.
Yep.
We all make mistakes.
Yep.
I've been in marketing for 13 years now, and I missed some of the most basic steps that I should have remembered today.
Yep.
And like I said, been doing this for over a decade. If my career were a child, it would be entering middle school, or it would be almost ready for high school right now. Like that's how old my career is. And I still make mistakes. So I guess the first step in like handling a crisis or any kind of situation is just to remember this shit happens to everybody. And it's not going to bring down your career as long as you haven't, tweeted something racist. That's a whole different level of crisis. But small missteps in a campaign or, a broken link somewhere, it's unfortunate, but it will not completely derail you.
Yeah. Did you tweet something racist or something? Is that why you said that?
No. I'm just saying that there are some crises you cannot recover from.
Okay.
That is one of them. But missing a step on a campaign is not something to get horrifically stressed out about or to freak out about or to let, spiral into destroying a relationship or something. Because I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen a lot where somebody's taken something small that really is easy to fix and just had a complete meltdown. That actually happened this week too. Something small that was easy to fix. Somebody had a meltdown about it. And
I'll ask you who that was later.
Yeah. It was small and easy to fix.
So, well, the key point just so far though, is that when these small things were pointed out to you, you didn't appear to me, I know we were talking text, to get all defensive and go like, I know all about this and you're wrong and this is all right. Because a lot of people will do that.
And that's a mistake when you're in a crisis, because guess what? You're not right. That's why you're in this situation. I wasn't right. You caught my mistake and it's okay, cool. Let me fix it real quick.
I would like to point out something. It was both of our mistakes because I am also working on this as well. And I did not look myself or ask these questions until today. So that was also right. So just want to point out right there, it's not all your fault. I too can take responsibility for this.
We all make it. Even Curtis, who is like the guru mastermind, knows everything, has made at least one mistake in partnering with me. No, I'm kidding.
I probably made about 30 mistakes just today. I want to point that out. So, okay. So the first thing is don't get defensive and don't freak out, basically, right? Is that like the first thing?
Yep.
Okay. And I think other than that, I mean, the next thing is to always look at what the most simplest handling is, because most people will try to look for something complicated. So like in our case, a couple of the things that we found right off the bat were just like simple little marketing type things that people should kind of think of. I mean, both of us should have thought of this like last week. I mean, in reality, this situation has been a situation for like 2 weeks and neither of us even really thought about it until today. So should I be clear or should I continue with my vagueness?
Just continue how you're doing it. Make people wonder what's going on.
I totally want to say what happened, but I'm going to withhold myself. Okay. So, anyways, the mistake that we made was very, 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 very simple and could actually happen to anyone if they're not thinking the whole thought through. But what we did is we kind of looked back and we're kind of like, okay, so what are some things that we aren't doing that we should be doing? And one of the things we realized was that we were directing people to a web page that didn't link to the item that we were selling directly. We had 2 steps involved instead of 1 step. And when we looked, there were people bouncing off the page as a result of this happening. And I want to point out again, I've been doing this for at least 8 years. Corinne's been doing this for about 8 to 10 years. And we both missed this very simple step. And after we both felt kind of retarded and stupid about it, Corinne just went, huh?
Nothing.
Oh, I don't know what I said, but okay. But after we both felt silly about it, Corinne went back, she went and fixed all the things. And then what happened then, Corinne?
We found even more issues.
Even more issues. So here's kind of the thing with this. And I want after we talk about this for a few minutes, there's another example I want to go over. But the thing is that if you're finding yourself like in a crisis, look for the basic things that you've missed. And usually it's going to be something just super, 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 super simple. And you also don't want to get mad about it. You don't want to take blame for it. You don't want to blame other people about it. Just go and fix it. And then also, now I lost my train of thought because Corinne just messaged me something. And also you want to make sure that you also let the client know about the thing at the same time. So that way you can let them know what you're doing to handle it. Like if you notice that you're making a mistake, like that you made some mistakes, something's not going right, just say to the client, like, look, I did this, but this is what I'm doing to fix it, which I think is what you did in this case.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Went to the client, said, this is what the issue is. This is how I'm fixing it. And they were pretty much, okay.
Yeah. And we did find some more other things about it too. Now, before we leave this part, do you got anything else you want to say about it? Nothing?
No,
okay, well,
I'm good.
Well, I do want to point out one thing. Again, Corinne handled this very well. Most people that I've worked with in the past, if I were to say something like that to them, they would just kind of rear up and then get all like defensive about it and then get all mad about it and tell me that I didn't know what the fuck I was doing and that was stupid and didn't work. But she just went in there, didn't appear to be mad.
No, you kept messaging me. You're going to kill me. You're going to be mad at me. And it's no. When it comes to like, I realize I am not a perfect human being. No, none of us are. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. Everybody in this world makes mistakes. And it doesn't mean I'm stupid. It doesn't mean I'm terrible at my job. It means I made a mistake and now I'm learning and improving. That's all it means.
Yep. 100%. So the next part about this that I want to kind of go over is that I kind of want to talk about listening to people that you work with that you know you're learning from, that type of thing, or people that are paying you. Because here's the thing on this is that a lot of times people will hire one of us. I know in my experience, assuming this is in your experience, and they'll tell you that they want something done. You'll start to do it, and then they'll tell you that they don't agree with you, or they don't think that'll work, or that's the wrong way to do it. Let me start with you, Corinne. Can you kind of explain some circumstances where this has happened to you and the result?
So actually, yeah, I've got one right now. This
Okay.
has happened with an upcoming release schedule with one of my clients.
Mhm.
They had a release scheduled for a time that it would not have been a good time to release. Their release strategy was moving way too fast, and it was going to actually end up being detrimental. They weren't going to get as many views, as many clicks, or as much coverage given the time frame that they were releasing things in.
Mhm.
And they fought me on it. But I think the thing that really helps with these kind of situations is when you have data and when you have solid talking points, not just, I feel like we should do it this way because this seems like a better idea. No, it's, we need to do it this way because of X, Y, and Z. This is what's going to be happening this week. This is why your release is going to get overshadowed if we do it
Mhm.
this time. This is why it's not a good idea to do it this close together from your previous release. You're going to end up losing coverage, because I've noticed even with like smaller bands, if they have two releases that are within a couple of weeks from each other, the publications will be like, well, we just covered them. Why are we covering this small band again?
Yeah.
I've had that happen to me twice.
Yeah.
And so going in there with data and saying, this is why this is a bad plan, but with concrete examples of why, is like the king of getting people to do what you want them to do.
I agree on that point. So give an example of how you would kind of come back with data on, let's give an example of, like, let's say the client wants to, release an album a certain week, but you think it's a bad idea. How would you handle that?
I would give the reasons why it's a bad idea.
Like what?
You're releasing it the same week as a giant band.
Yeah.
You're releasing it a week when there's going to be a lot of competition. You're releasing it, there's all sorts of reasons why you can bring it in, why it would be a bad idea that you can bring to them to try and convince them otherwise. Sometimes those kind of dates are locked in before you get involved, which is an unfortunate situation. I've been in that situation, and there's just, honestly, you've just got to make the best of it that you can.
Yep.
But if you get in there and it's not locked into place, you can say, oh, you're releasing your album the same week as Cannibal Corpse. Not a good idea.
Yep.
You're releasing your album the week of 420 when everybody is releasing something. Not a
Yep.
good idea. So
Yep.
there's always ways you can bring it, bring some facts into it.
Okay, so like, let's say it was like, for example, I'm testing you here to see what you would say. So let's say, for example, they wanted to release 2 videos like within a 2-week span. What would be some data points you could bring back on something like that, which we both had happen?
Yes. Well, the biggest one that I can personally bring is publication, because I work for one, and
True.
I've seen things, oh, we've just covered them. And then they just kind of fall off to the wayside because they literally were just covered. So it's a matter of, if we've got a whole bunch of new bands that we're going to cover, if we're going to cover somebody small, we'll cover a new guy if we've just covered you. So that has happened. People will also think that you're releasing, like you're sending out a re-send of the press release that you just sent. So I know that you send multiple press releases for the same video.
Yep.
I've done this where I thought it was the same thing that somebody had already sent me an email about. I had already seen it, blah, 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 blah. It didn't scream to me that it was something new because they had just released something.
Yep.
And the other thing is, you can point out, if you have access to their statistics, you can point out peaks and valleys between releases. So it'll always go like this, oh, a release, it's up here, and then it drifts away, and then it comes back up here, and then it drifts away. So what you're going to end up with is 2 releases back to back, and then 6 months of flat, because you've released things too close together. So instead of having a nice, steady, constant line of growth, you'll just have this one peak and then nothing.
I like how your arms keep disappearing because of your back.
Trippy. It's because I'm in hell.
I guess so. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's all good. So, okay, no, that makes sense. So, all right. So now, what else can we talk about for that point? So, Okay, so you got the data points there. Is there anything else that you can combat these things with other than data points, or is that it?
Well, I'm a manager, so I can always just say I'm the manager. We're doing it this way. No,
Well, yeah, but
I'm joking. I'm joking. Obviously, I don't do that.
Yeah.
But no, just honestly being respectful, saying I understand your point of view, but and coming up with solid points as to why. It's really all I've ever had to do to convince somebody. And sometimes you're just not going to convince people. They have to be proven wrong. And in
Yeah,
that case, just do what you need to do and say, hey, this is what we can do better next time, once they actually see what you were saying. Because some people always have to see it.
yeah. Well, one thing I also want to point out too is that before we go on to the next part is that sometimes sometimes me or Cori might give certain advice and it will normally work that way, but sometimes in marketing things just don't go the way as planned. Like sometimes a big release will pop up, sometimes people just aren't interested. There's all sorts of variables that can happen, because I've had it where people have changed things after I told them to do it, and it's still bombed. And it didn't matter it was just like nobody cared. Just nobody fucking cared. So there's always that factor too. So I want to point out, even if you do listen to us, there's a 99%, 9.9% chance it's going to work. There's always that little tiny thing that might not. Okay, so now that kind of brings me on to the next part of it, then dealing with the variables. So Miss Marketer, Miss 10 years in the business, I have a question for you. So I want to know how you're going to answer this. So let's say that, let's say a variable does pop up. So you set the release date and it's 2 months out, let's say 3 months out, everything looks clear, everything looks great. And then all of a sudden you start the campaign or whatever. 2-3 weeks later, you find out Metallica's releasing and Megadeth and who's another big band? What's their names? Trivium.
Slayer has a reunion tour.
Yeah, and Trivium's out the same week, and Slipknot.
Yeah.
So it all comes out. You find this out. What can be done in these circumstances? I'd like to hear how Corinne Westbrook would handle this.
I'd use it to my advantage if we're using ads.
Would you? Okay.
So this is yet another situation I found myself in, where client has an album releasing sandwiched between two really large bands.
Yep.
Like one is the week before, one is the week after.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did is I ran some YouTube ads targeting those bands' channels, the bigger bands, because I knew there was going to be a lot of traffic.
Yep.
They're complementary to my client.
Yep.
And I'm using that increased traffic on their channels to my advantage, because by the time I found that out, it was already too late. The release had already been announced. It had already been set in stone. There was no way I could change it. So use it to your advantage. The other thing you can do if you're not running ads, since you know people are going to be looking for these bands, create some playlists on Spotify and mix your songs in with those bands if they're complementary, and start tagging those bands. So you start popping up to their audience being like, oh, I just made this, death metal playlist with the Black Dahlia Murder, who has a super awesome album coming out, and, mix your songs in there, use it to your advantage, coast on there. It's like, it's like a wave, just coast with them. Don't try to fight it, because you're going to lose.
Coast with the wave. I like that.
Yeah,
all right.
Go with it.
Well, you know what I've also done is if it's set in stone and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, I just try beating it in front of everybody's just as much as possible, like just throwing it in their faces, like posting about it, resending the promo out. I mean, I'm almost at the borderline of spam when I do this sometimes, but the issue is that you kind of gotta, like, if something like that's going on, you can either just kind of die or coast, like you said, right? So, I mean, if you try to coast or ride the wave rather, then you might be able to pull it off. Another thing I want to point out too, because we had this case, is that you could also release some content after the release date to try to beat that.
Exactly. That is the other part of what I was talking about earlier with shifting the strategy. to where there are now releases of videos, video releases coming out after the album has dropped to keep that momentum going for even longer.
Yep. And in Corinne's case, for her thing, and we're going to go on to other examples because just using you. In Corinne's case, she also found a couple auxiliary events that she can do with the band as well, which I will not name since they're not out announced yet. But so you had the 2 auxiliary events, 2 videos, and then there's an additional song as well. So those are all things that you can do as well if you're running into a problem like that. Next thing, did you have anything more you want to say on that first?
Nope. Go for it. Keep going on to your next thing.
Cool. All right. So next thing I want to talk about is just kind of like planning. So how do I want to say this? It doesn't really matter how much you plan. You're always going to miss something.
Yep. And something's always going to come up. Because one of those example is one of those auxiliary events that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
We were locked in for July, and then all of a sudden the event was, hey, can you do May instead?
There you go.
Gotta be able to adapt.
Yeah. Well, that's totally true. And a lot of people can't. What was I going to say on it? So yeah, I mean, like you kind of got to work out your plan. Another example, let's see, we're going to talk about you since you're sitting right here. Another example is that Corinne had a set date she wanted. Well, the band wanted, her client wanted for a certain thing, but I kept saying we can't have a certain date. So can you kind of go over what this discussion and how we resolved it? You know what I'm talking about?
Which date was it? Because there's been a couple with these guys.
There was the video. They wanted a lockdown on a date for a video, and I was like, "Fuck that."
Oh, that's the one that I've been talking about this whole time.
Making sure, yeah. But I'm saying just clarify on it, though.
Yeah. So really, it just came down to coming with the data of why it was bad to release it at that time and why we needed to shift our strategy.
No, but I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. There was a point. They wanted a specific date set for me and you.
Oh, that. Yes. Got it. Yes.
Yeah.
So even after we moved
the
release, they wanted to be able to have a specific date. So for that one, I explained to them the goals of what we were going for. We were wanting to get major publication, obviously, like everyone else. And when you're going for bigger publications, you're at their whim, not at your own. And so I told them, you will have the date when the publication gives me the date. But explaining to them the goal and why we're doing it that way. And I know it's inconvenient, but this is the way that it's done. They got it once they understood what we were going for. If I had just gone in there and said, yeah, I'll give it to you when I get it, they wouldn't have grasped that. And that's not transparent and that's not fair to them because it's their music, it's their project. So explaining the goal of what the plan was and what we're doing and why we're doing it that way, that's just being transparent.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is that a lot of times with newer bands, they think they can have like the set date when things are going to come out. But again, like Corinne said, you're at the whim of the publication. You're not Nuclear Blast, you're not Century Media, you're not a big known commodity. So you kind of got to go in when they have space. So if you're non-flexible and like, for example, let's say your Metal Injection is probably a bad example because you guys are pretty flexible.
Yeah, the only thing that we do is we tell people no Fridays because everybody releases on Friday. But beyond that, we're pretty, and I mean, even then, if it's something I'm really into, I'll push for a Friday. But it's much easier if people are flexible, but we're probably the most flexible of the publications.
You guys are 100%. Because for example, like what was it, 2 weeks ago, I was trying to set, I had a client that had a very specific date that they wanted something out. And there was absolutely no publication that had their date open that they wanted, like out of their wish list of publications. So I had to go back. I had to tell the client, we have to switch the date to this, or you're not getting it. They finally understood. And I said, okay, no problem. But again, you're at the whim of the publication. You're not at your own, like the world does not revolve around you when you're a smaller band. If you were major publication, or sorry, if you were a major band or on a major label, yes, it would. Otherwise, no.
Well,
Um,
even if a smaller band is on a major label, even then they don't get to pick.
yeah, unless the publicist or the label has a lot of fucking sway. That's the
Exactly.
only way. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, a Slayer's publicist came up to you and they wanted the band to do something, and they said, "Hey, we got Slayer."
Yeah,
You
but
know?
that's Slayer. If it was some, like recently signed, still really tiny band, even then it's like, yeah, don't do it on a Friday.
Yeah,
We
usually. Yeah.
still we still get labels, I mean big labels saying, what do you have available when it comes to their small bands? So even if you're on a major label, don't think you're always going to get your way.
Yep.
Until you're Metallica, you're not getting your way.
So to bring this all back to the beginning, because we kind of wandered off a little bit, I think, didn't we?
Mhm.
We all rough.
How to handle a crisis and how to work your way through difficult hurdles is what we're
Yeah.
going through.
So to kind of work this all the way back. So a key thing that Corinne brought up before this even started was your key friend in everything is Google.
Mm-hmm. That is my best friend.
Yeah.
I will tell you a big secret about me right now that most people don't realize. You know it, Curtis, but most people don't realize I'm an English major.
Yes.
I have one of those useless degrees, but
Yes.
I've been in marketing for 13 years. I know how to do web development. I know how to do graphic design. There is absolutely no reason why with my degree I should be doing what I'm doing. But the reason I know how to do it is because I Googled it all. I learned my entire career on Google and YouTube.
And you probably had to unlearn your English major to write for metal injection.
A little bit, because otherwise I would be going through and fixing their stuff all day long.
I know that. That's why I was saying that. I'd be a jerk.
I do still do it though. Like I will go in there, even with the big guys stuff. I'll be like, no, this is just not right. I have to fix this.
Have you ever had anyone try to fix your stuff even though when you knew it was right?
Yes.
That's got to be the worst.
Especially when I use the word like whom or something. Whom? Don't you mean who? Or if I use who, don't you mean whom? No, you're using it wrong.
Just as an aside, before we wrap this up, I got another English major that also does some writing for me. And the most thing to me is when you or him will send me like this beautifully written thing, and I know it's got no errors. And then the band will come through and tell me all these grammatical errors that are fucking sitting there. And they're English majors, and I'll be like, I don't fucking care. They don't know what they're doing. And then I'll have to go back and just like put the commas in like these weird spots and like fucking semicolons and shit. Just as an aside. Anyways.
I bet the bands are all fans of comma splices. I noticed that a lot. I know you don't know what that is, but it's basically separating two sentences with a comma when you should just use a period and start a new sentence. I'm sorry. It's the like biggest pet peeve of mine that bands do.
Are you English-splaining me?
I'm English-splaining you.
That was amazing.
I need my hair up in a bun with my glasses and like a ruler so I can just be like.
Do you have glasses?
I do. I actually wear glasses.
Can you bring the glasses on next time? And you'll be like, we'll call you teacher. I'm just kidding.
This is going to get weird.
Well, one last thing I want to say before we get off is, okay, so that's another aspect actually I want to bring up. Not the teacher aspect, but so yeah, like let's say if a band, how would you handle that then? Because like let's say you did a bio for a band and they did ask you to do all that type of stuff. How would you handle that then? Because that would be kind of like almost a crisis type thing like this. So how would you handle it? The band's trying to tell you you got your commas in the wrong space, you know, all these things capitalized wrong, blah, blah, blah. I want to hear how you would handle that.
I've genuinely not been in that situation.
But if it happened.
Most people trust me. Honestly, coming back, respectful, taking their pointers, telling them why they're wrong in a nice way. Like, I don't know. People listen to me when I tell them that they're wrong about stuff. Okay. And I just, I understand your point of view, and I explain to them why it's not the correct way to do it.
Cool. Okay, cool. Well,
and as long as you're nice about it, a lot of people will listen. And then honestly, if they don't, I'll just do what they're asking me to do, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to look like an idiot, not me. Even if they say, oh, Cori wrote this and she did a terrible job, blame her. I keep receipts of everything that I do. So I can be like, no, this is what you told me to do.
Well, I think that's an important thing too, before we wrap up too, is to keep receipts of like the communication if you need to.
Mhm.
Like if you know that the client or the person you're working with is making a mistake, to have that there. But the trick is if you have to kind of show them that they made the mistake, not you, you kind of got to handle it in a certain way, because if you just kind of like, you can't be a dick about it. You have to kind of like be tactful, I think, is the other point. You know what I mean?
Usually what I do in that situation is I say, this is what we agreed on in this communication, and I make it both of our fault.
Yeah. That's usually the best way of doing it. And I know you and I are both pretty good at that, as we try to take responsibility and not let,
We take responsibility. We both take responsibility for the other.
yeah,
Like we fall all over ourselves trying to throw ourselves under the bus.
yeah. But that's also a teamwork thing too, because
Yeah.
if you're working like even with your bandmates or with someone else, you should be not necessarily defending them necessarily, but you should be trying your best to, because, help them with their mistakes and not let them be thrown under the bus for it. That's my own opinion for it, at least.
Somebody'd have to do something pretty bad for me to fully throw them under a bus.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it's just not conducive to anybody's relationships, working or otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Anything you want to go over before we wrap up?
No, I think this is some cathartic information for me anyway. I mean, I hope it was a good venting session while also being helpful.
Was too. So I think maybe we should probably do at least one of these a week, because these seem to be, people like hearing from you.
No, don't listen to me.
Yeah, listen to you. So I'm going to end this off by saying, party on, Cori.
Party on, Curtis.